Hello, or should I say bonjour, buongiorno, hola, guten tag, dzień dobry, g'day, or however else you say it. I'm Guncle Mark, thanks for clicking on the thumbnail, and I hope you enjoy this video. Now, since this video is all about Eurovision, I think this would be a great time to talk about today's sponsor. Psych, you thought I was going to say Babbel, right? I don't have any sponsors right now. I'm just still working stiff and doing this out of the goodness of my heart and to hear myself talk. Now, if you subscribe to my channel, I might be able to get sponsors at some point, so go ahead and hit that button as it costs you nothing. Also, ring the bell for future notifications, click the like, and leave a comment about how badly I'm butchering the pronunciations. Now, at the time I'm recording this, we are less than a month away from Eurovision number 69. Nice. And although there have been hundreds of acts and songs over the decades, here in the US, only a few songs have become top 40 hits. For example, Nel blu dipinto di blu, aka Volare, which was the first Grammy-winning song and record of the year, and is still the only foreign language song to win either. Others include Eres tu, Save Your Kisses for Me, Ooh Ah Just a Little Bit, that sounded awkward coming out of my mouth, and Arcade. I like to think that with the right viral formula, recent songs such as Think About Things, Cha Cha Cha, or Rim Tim Tagi Dim could have become hits here. I mean, it worked for Gangnam Style. As it is, quite a few Billboard Top 40 acts have appeared at Eurovision, some before they became famous and some after. And I'm going to go over a list of 12 of them, 12, or Douze, being the maximum points given by each country in jury and televoting. And there will be some that I will miss with it that I know of, but I decided to narrow it down to the most well-known acts. You can let me know in the comments below who you think I should have included. And with that out of the way, let's start with the most obvious entry on this list. Prior to ABBA's win in 1974, Sweden's highest finish was a second place in 1966. Waterloo would be a breakout for them, not only for getting them into the public eye, but also under their new name, as they had little success recording under their actual first names. They had competed in 1973 at Melodifestivalen, the Swedish competition for Eurovision entries, with the song Ring Ring, which finished third and spurred them on to continue the next year. Now, what many of you may not know, and I didn't know before researching this, is that prior to 1973, all countries had to sing in their native languages. Sweden's entry that year was sung in English and placed fifth, so I expect that this influenced ABBA to write their song in English, although they would also record French and German versions of Waterloo as well. Now, as it turns out, they hit that window at the right time, as the native language rule was put back in 1977 and kept until 1999. I don't know that ABBA could have become the superstars that they are if the native language rule had still been in place during those years. Now, they also brought stylish outfits and even a little camp with the conductor dressed as Napoleon, and to this day, Eurovision is famous for over-the-top performances and costumes. ABBA brought a modern take to Eurovision, became one of the biggest bands in music history, and for that I have to say, thank you for the music. The next 5 entries all come from the UK, which makes sense since a good number of their entries have hit the US charts. At Eurovision, they've been in a slump since the turn of the century, as the UK has finished in the top 5 only 3 times, but in the last place 5 times, and 2 of those ending up with the dreaded nul point, or 0 points, from juries and televoting together. In the 20th century, the UK ended up with 5 wins, and for their second win in 1969, Idina Monsoon's most famous client ended up with an unusual victory. Lulu became an overnight star in the US with To Sir With Love, which was Billboard's #1 song of the year 1967. In the UK, she had her own TV specials, and it was on Happening with Lulu in 1969 that she had her audience vote for which song she would sing at Eurovision, as she'd been chosen by the BBC to represent the UK. One of the entries, I Can't Go On, was written by Elton John and Bernie Taupin before Elton's career took off, but that song finished last in voting. The viewer's choice ended up being Boom Bang a Bang, which I always want to call Bang Boomerang or Boom Bangarang, which would be a really weird Lulu Skrillex mashup. It's a chipper song with the title referring to a heartbeat, so it was the boom clap or padam padam of its day. In the first and only time in Eurovision history, her song, along with three others from France, Spain, and the Netherlands, ended up tying for first place. This is because there were fewer countries competing at the time and fewer points given out as well. And since there was no tiebreaker rule in place back then, the result remained. Of course, this was controversial, and 5 countries didn't compete the next year, with the rumor being that they were protesting the prior outcome. Lulu later said in an interview with John Peel that she thought the song was rotten. But it did hit number 2 on the British charts, so I don't think she's too upset. The previous Eurovision in 1968 featured our next act, a man whose success on the British charts was topped only by the Beatles and Elvis.
Congratulations and celebrations.
Cliff Richard had minor success on the US charts prior to Eurovision, going all the way back to 1959 when his first British number 1, Living Doll, peaked at number 30 here. In the 60s, he had 33 top 10 hits on the British charts with 7 number 1s, but on the US charts, only a remake of It's All in the Game would reach the top 40. Similar to Lulu's contest, Cliff appeared on Cilla Black's variety show to showcase the 6 finalist songs. As it turns out, Cilla had originally been chosen to represent the UK, but she declined after the UK had won in 1967 and she didn't believe that they would win consecutively. And she'd be right. Congratulations was the overwhelming winner with over 140,000 more votes than second placed. Now, the UK hosted the contest as the previous winner and were heavy betting favorites to win, but Spain's La 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 ended up winning by just 1 point. Now, the voting was unusual. Instead of a 5-4-3-2-1 setup, each country was given 10 points to spread out among entries with the maximum of 6 points for any one song. For example, that year, Luxembourg gave France 3 points and 7 other countries 1. So even though Congratulations had more countries voting for it, Spain had the higher point counts to offset that. Now, it would be another number 1 for Cliff and would actually hit the Billboard Hot 100, peaking all the way at number 99. Cliff would eventually have US success starting in the 70s, ending up with 3 top 10 hits, and would have a number 20 hit with the duet Suddenly with our next UK entrant.
On a wet day, dry day, great to be alive day, brother takes the stand.
Olivia Newton-John may be more well known as an Aussie, but she was born in England, so this isn't a case of voice for hire. We'll go over a couple of those later on in the video. When she was chosen as the 1974 UK representative, yet the same year as ABBA, she already had US pop success, as Let Me Be There was a top 10 hit the year before. The same write-in voting was in effect, with the 6 songs she sang being featured on Clunk Click, hosted by the now disgraced Jimmy Savile. Seriously, don't look him up, don't go down that rabbit hole, it's gross. The winning song was Long Live Love, which would end up tied for 4th place, a respectable finish, although that dress is nul point. Similarly to Lulu, she also didn't care for the song per the book The Eurovision Song Contest, The Official History. And I can see why. It didn't fit her then country image or her later sexy one. Yeah, she was the Taylor Swift of her day. Personally, I find it unappealing, childish, dowdy. Yeah, I'm still talking about that dress. Her nightgown in Greece was more attractive. Seriously, Barbara Dex would have won the Olivia Newton-John Worst Dressed Award if that was a thing back then.
Where did you get that dress? It's awful, and those shoes and that coat, jeez.
The next UK entry is their last winning entry going back to 1997, a British band led by an American woman. I wish I could say it was the Pretenders. It's Katrina and the Waves.
Love shine a light in every corner of my heart.
Technically, they're not a one-hit wonder, as they had 2 more songs reach the top 40 during the 80s. But they hit a lull going into the 90s, and so did the UK at Eurovision, because their last win was in 1981 with Making Your Mind Up by Bucks Fizz, although they were consistently in the top 10 with 4 second-place finishes. Love Shine a Light was written by the guitarist Kimberly Rue as a favor to the drummer's brother, as he belonged to a charity organization called Samaritans, and he wanted an anthem for them. The reason why it was entered to the Great British Song Contest has several different stories, but the band paid a £250 entry fee to the BBC, and they chose it as one of 8 semi-finalists. A radio show on BBC Two presented them, and listeners voted on the final 4. The next month, those 4 performed their songs, and the winner was chosen by televote. Now, Kimberly must have had second thoughts about his song being entered in the competition, as he didn't perform with the band for either GBSC or Eurovision. The song would handily win thanks to its inspirational message, but Katrina would later say it hurt the band's rock cred and would lead to their breakup 2 years later. Personally, I think Kimberly's refusal to perform helped play a part. I guess love dimmed the light for them. After 1997, the UK continued recruiting chart toppers in an effort to win. In 2000, they turned to Nikki French, who had a huge hit with a dance remake of Total Eclipse of the Heart, but she ended up in 16th place out of 24 entries, which was at that time the UK's worst finish. In 2012, the BBC chose Engelbert Humperdinck, who would end up 25th and second to last. So in 2013, hoping for a better result and running on desperation, they turned to the original singer of Total Eclipse of the Heart. When Bonnie Tyler was chosen in 2013, the BBC had been making internal choices instead of setting up contests for the public to vote on. Now, I don't know why they thought going for name recognition instead of actual song quality would net a win, but, well, that failed spectacularly. The song chosen was Believe in Me, which, upon release, received mixed reviews from critics, and even the public was meh about it, with 54% of voters in an online poll from The Guardian thinking that she had no chance to win. She did end up finishing better than Engelbert, as she ended up 19th, with her performance receiving more praise than the song. For UK fans at the time, this would be further proof that the BBC was either phoning it in and didn't care, or had no clue what to do. However, after getting nul point in 2021, they did get a second place in 2022. So there is the chance that the UK will get right back to winning as they once did. Speaking of 2021, let's check in on that year's winner, one of the few rock bands to hit the top 40 in recent years. Italy has an amazing track record at Eurovision. It's won 3 times, but finished last only once, back in 1966 with, of all people, Domenico Modugno of Volare fame. Although there were years when they didn't compete, including a stretch between 1998 and 2010. Since they've been back, they've had 6 top 5 finishes, including Måneskin's win with Zitti e Buoni. The name of the band is actually Danish, as their bassist Victoria De Angelis is half Danish. They appeared on Italy's X Factor in 2017, finished second, and were soon hitting the Italian charts. They entered the Sanremo Music Festival in 2021 and won, which allowed them to represent Italy in Eurovision. They had to edit the song due to Italian profanities being part of the original lyrics, but still won by 25 points over French singer Barbara Pravi. Although it was the favorite to win, the last rock song to win prior to Zitti e Buoni was Hard Rock Hallelujah from Finland's Lordi back in 2006. After their win, their remake of the Four Seasons Beggin', which was originally released in 2017 after their X Factor appearance, was re-released and would become an international hit, reaching number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 3 on Billboard's Global 200. And on that latter chart, they've had 6 more charting singles, with Zitti e Buoni peaking at number 22. Måneskin may be the newest act on this list, but I have a feeling they'll be around for a few more years and might just get some more top 40 singles. Let's talk about another Italian-speaking nation, this one being the exclave of San Marino. Now, being such a small country surrounded by Italy, they tend to have non-natives represent them at Eurovision, as there's no rule against this. But the results have been poor, as only 3 of their 14 songs have gotten out of the semifinal rounds into the finals. 2021 was one of those 3, with an Italian singer named Senhit, a song called Adrenalina, and a bit of help from a US rap megastar. Do you think Florida was a fan of Eurovision and looking for a chance to perform for any nation there? Yeah, probably not. But Zenit was supposed to represent San Marino for the 2020 contest, which was canceled due to COVID. And since she couldn't compete with her 2020 song, she was probably looking for any angle that would get her new song to the final. The Swedish songwriters, again, no rule against non-native songwriters, were shopping around for rappers to contribute to the song. And in an interview with Sydney radio station 2 SER 107.3 FM, she said they tried to recruit Pitbull and Sean Paul, who each turned it down before Flo Rida agreed. The one stipulation that could have thrown a wrench into the works was Flo Rida having to perform at the venue instead of appearing on screen only, but that ultimately worked out. Thanks to some pre-contest appearances, including one in Warsaw, she netted San Marino their first Douze point in the finals from Poland's jury vote. Even though the song finished 22nd overall, I think it should have been higher. San Marino's best finish so far has been 19th in 2019, but I'm hoping that this year's entry, Tutta l'Italia, gets into the final and surpasses that placement. For our next two entries, we head to Germany, and our first contestant was part of a group at the 1987 Eurovision contest, where he held a guitar in his hands and didn't play a lick. It was a sign of things to come for his non-singing career. Rob Pilatus may be more infamous as one half of Milli Vanilli, but prior to that, he'd been trying to break into entertainment as a model, a breakdancer, and for a short time he was a backup singer with the band Wind. Or is it Wind? That band had represented Germany at Eurovision in 1985 with the song For Alle, which finished second. They entered the 1987 national final with the song Lass die Sonne in dein Herz, which finished first based on votes from a 500-person panel meant to represent a cross-section of the German public. They went on to Eurovision, where they once again finished second, becoming to date the only act to have two second-place finishes. They did perform a third time in 1992, but there they finished 16th. Rob's stint with Wind didn't last long, but at least it got him the chance to show his stuff at Eurovision before becoming the MTV disgraced icon he ended up. Recent German Eurovision results have been even worse than the UK. They did win in 2010, but since then, they've had 4 last-place finishes with 1 nul point and 3 second-to-last finishes. One of the few bright spots, if you can call it that, was a 21st place in 2013 by our next entry, one of the biggest dance acts of the 2000s. Cascada, not to be confused with Cascade or Cascade, had 2 top 40 hits, with Every Time We Touch hitting number 10 in 2005 and Evacuate the Dance Floor hitting number 25 in 2009. In Europe, they were much bigger, with their songs hitting number 1 in France, Sweden, Ireland, UK, and the Netherlands. They were chosen to be one of 12, Douze, finalists for Unser Song for Malmö, Malmö being the Swedish city hosting Eurovision that year. Votes were made by a jury, radio listeners, and TV viewers. Cascada and the runner-up, La Brassbanda, received first and second place votes between radio and TV, putting them in a tie for first. But the jury gave Cascada 8 points and La Brassbanda 1, ensuring Cascado's win. However, shortly after that win, allegations were made that the song Glorious was a duplicate of last year's Eurovision winner Euphoria. Ultimately, the charges of plagiarism were cleared, but I believe there are enough similarities between the two that viewers decided not to vote for a copycat.
Groundbreaking.
This would be Cascada's last overseas hit, and although they are still recording, their recent chart history has been less than glorious. Our next performer is the most successful Spanish-speaking singer in history, with over 300 million records sold worldwide. But back in 1970, he was still a rising star and got to represent Spain at Eurovision with a song about the first of the girls he's loved before. Julio Iglesias' backstory is well known about his early soccer career, the car crash in 1963 which left him immobile for 2 years, and learning to play the guitar while he was in rehab, which started his music career. In 1968, he won the Benidorm Festival, which got him his first record contract. To qualify for Eurovision in 1970, he entered the Festival de la Canción Española, which not only selected the song but the act as well. 2 acts per song and 20 songs, so 40 possible outcomes, which sounds crazy and would explain why the festival only ran twice. Why this format? I don't know. Blame it on Francisco Franco, who is still dead. There were 2 semifinals and juries selected the finalists. The song Gwendolyn, which was written by Julio, was the winner, and Julio was chosen to represent Spain since the second singer was a French woman. Why did a French woman compete? I have no idea. Now, because this was the year where several countries didn't compete because of the 1969 result that I mentioned earlier, there were only 12 countries performing. So you'd think Spain would have a good shot to win. But Julio ended up in a 3-way tie for 4th with 8 points. He would record the song in several languages, and the record holds the distinction of being one of the last original 78 RPM recordings released for sale overseas. He would move to Miami in 1979, have 2 top 20 hits on the US charts in the 80s, and father Enrique, who might go on to surpass Julio's status. Like father, like son. This year's Eurovision is being held in Switzerland, as the winning country the prior year usually hosts the contest the next. Switzerland has won 3 times, including the very first contest won by Lise Assia, who would represent Switzerland the first 3 years of Eurovision. Last year's was Nemo's The Code, but the one in 1988 was sung by an up-and-coming chanteuse who had a song hit the French charts when she was just 14 years old. But she wasn't a Swiss miss. She is a Quebec queen.
Ne partez pas sans moi, laissez-moi vous suivre.
I've tried finding info on how Celine Dion was chosen to sing as a finalist, as she isn't even sure. But since there are no rules against non-citizens performing for the country, as I mentioned earlier with Florida, I surmise that some Swiss TV exec remembered her French hit or had traveled to Quebec and heard her there. Whatever the case, she sang Ne partez pas sans moi as one of the 9 finalists competing on Concours Eurovision de la Chanson 88. Votes to select the winner were made by 5 juries, 1 of press, 1 of music experts, and 3 of viewers from the TV stations representing French, Italian, and German/Romansh languages. She won 3 of the 5 juries' first place and won by 7 points, which is more than what she won Eurovision by. There were 21 countries competing that year, and her win was by only 1 point over the UK. Considering France and Luxembourg, both French-speaking countries, gave her only 1 point, you'd think there would be some francophone gameplay in her favor, but that year's contest had only jury votes, no public. And if there had been televoting, I would expect that would have pushed her further ahead as first place. She released her first English-language album in 1990 featuring the hit Where Does My Heart Beat Now, and the rest is history. So there you are, 12 of the most famous musical acts to compete at Eurovision and how well they did. Now, during the research, I found it fascinating how many changes Eurovision and qualifications have taken through the years. But even today, some countries will choose their songs internally while others hold televised contests. As far as this year, being the son of Polish immigrants, I will be rooting for Justyna Steczkowska and Gaia. But as far as what I expect will win, I'll just say 4 words. Iksi kaksi kolma sauna. We'll see if I'm right. Thanks for watching until the end. I am Gunkel Mark. Adios. Ciao. Do widzenia. Yeah, I'm still not getting that Babbel sponsorship.